Aftershoot community, YouTube, all of the places. Justin here. I'm gonna just pull up the community on my phone here so I can make sure I can monitor the chat. But I'm super excited for what we have scheduled today. This is going to be an extremely insightful, amazing opportunity to learn some really cool things. This was I met this amazing guest a few years ago, and I remember I saw him from like across the space, and I was like, he was in the next booth over, UAF. Shout out to UAF. He was doing some model work there, and I looked over and I was like, man, he is so good. You could just tell by the way he was like shooting and posing and doing all of the things. And then lo and behold, I went and followed his Instagram, and I was like, wait, this is like another world worth of work, right? It's a totally different, amazing thing. So I was like, I have to just be a part of this. And then I was so lucky to be able to actually attend the, oops, sorry, got my screen pulled up. I was actually able to attend the AIBP retreat a couple years back, and I got to see him actually teaching some of the stuff that he does in action. And I was like, all right, this is like priceless information, things that everyone needs to know. This will just level up your photography skills and your ability to produce like outstanding work, quite simply. So without further ado, I'd love to bring in our special guest. And again, we'll be monitoring the chat. We encourage you to ask questions, interact with us. But without further ado, I'd love to introduce the amazing, the one, the only Nino.
Wow, that was a hell of an intro, man. Thank you.
No problem.
I appreciate you guys having me. First and foremost, I always have crazy mustache envy because of you. But I'll get there one day. I will grow up one day, my friend.
You can do it. I have faith. Anyone can do it.
I have more gray than you, though, so I got that going.
That's okay.
Anyway. Well, yeah, thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate all of that. When you guys asked me to do this, I was like, well, heck yeah, let's sit down and talk some retouching. Obviously, this, anyone who's ever seen a live stream of mine or a course of mine, I'm very improv oriented. I love engagement. So I want to make sure anyone watching, ask questions, please, by all means. Okay. Justin will be monitoring that as he says, and I'm open to questions. If you went to my YouTube, you could watch me walk through a photo. That's available. I want to make this as much engagement as possible, though I will be showing you some of my philosophies and whatnot. And by the way, I'm also about 6 or 8 months into glasses. I managed 47 years without wearing them, and I have not sorted out how to work it out and do my good studio monitors. So it's a little wobbly right now. But anyway, so all that preamble aside, yeah, I got Photoshop open. I got a few sort of fashion images open. They'll probably bring up some interesting questions because there's an element to them that you probably don't know about. By the way, I got to share now, right, Justin?
Yeah, I haven't shared your screen. I actually want to ask you a couple questions
first.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I feel like everyone should get to know you a little bit more. How'd you get into photography?
Oh boy. Okay. So the question that when I get that question a lot, it's interesting because I grew up with photography since I was born. However, thanks to Dad. It's my dad. He was a portrait shooter for many years, and then he moved to like luxury real estate and architecture in his later career. He's basically retired now, 75 years old. And I got into photography at 33 years old. So we're getting some people saying something audio delay and lost you guys or something.
Yeah, okay. I'm looking into that. I think, let's see.
Just want to make sure I'm not babbling to no one.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm going to ask in the chat, see if everyone can see it. I have it pulled up. Okay. It does appear that we're still good on Facebook. So Facebook is good.
My phone just went off with the notification and I see us. So let me see.
Okay, cool. Let's see. George said we're back.
You hear us. Okay. And we're back. 15-second delay. Holy smokes, Joe. That's a big one. Let me kick you out real quick. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. I'm going to just pull you off and then pull them back in and see if we can get them synced back up. Hey, tech support 101, reboot.
Love it.
Right. So to answer your question, I've been at this since I was 33 years old, which is actually pretty late in life for people following sort of artistic passions, right? But I grew up with it all the time, is what what dad did. And so I was a graphic designer, I was a musician, I was a web designer, video editor briefly in the 90s, in a very different world of video editing than today. And so, yeah, I started in 2009, and here I am. There's a lot to it, but that's the basics and how I got into it. I did not get into it just chasing like a passion. I got into it because 2008, 2009 was a financial difficulty for the country, and my companies that I was running at the time were starting to go down, and I wanted to diversify what I offered. So I went into photography because it was there. And I know if you expected some beautiful, dramatic, artful, passionate story, I don't have that. But I did realize once I got into it, wow, I love this. Wow, wow, wow. And then the passion really sparked after I started, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's awesome. That's my favorite question to ask because, I always assume that everyone's here because they either had a passion for photography or a passion for business or something in between. So it sounds like it was like kind of just all the worlds collided and you got set up with this amazing thing. Tell me a little bit more about your work. Like generally, what are where does your work go? I know it's very editorial and incredible. And we'll post some links for people to check out so they can see what you do. But yeah, tell us about your work.
Well, it's evolved a lot, for lack of a better term. There was a time there where I wasn't sure what I was doing. And when I say this to people in the last year and a half or so, I mean, no insult to anyone I worked with in the past, but I shot a lot of stuff I just didn't care about. I shot a lot of token glamour, a lot of, bikini models and whatnot. And that's not to say that bikini models are a problem, but the way I approached it was a little bit more token. Everything was production value based. And I ramped up my production value in terms of lighting, in terms of retouching. And I thought that is the direction I want to chase. But I got bored. And in the last 1 to 2 years, I've really tried to explore, what am I saying? Not so much social messages, but what am I trying to convey? What kind of depth am I trying to show in my work? And I don't think I've gotten there yet. But I do know that I'm still bored with a lot of things and trying to really explore what it is in my head that I want to convey with what some people might flippantly label pictures of pretty girls. That's not what I intend. I capture beauty, I capture strength, eroticism, power, empowerment in general. I try to capture style. I'm not a fashionista. I don't know the fashion brands. I don't know very much about that. I just know when I like something and it looks good, etc. So this year, especially this year, but also last year, I really focused on making art for the art. I don't take gigs anymore. I don't take private shoots. I just don't. Luckily, MVP Retouch Tools gives me a career. It's a lot of work, but it allows me to kind of shoot what I want if I want. And that's kind of where I'm at. So I tell people I am now currently exploring the career of pretentious artist. I just do what I want and only what I want. It's not to say the life is luxurious, but I had to follow my passion into what it is I'm trying to do with this work for real. And I have some lovely collaborators that I've been lucky enough to work with, and some coming up that give me that freedom and trust, and to try to create some work that's have some more depth to it. And again, I haven't figured it out yet. I admit that openly, but that's where I'm at. I'm exploring what I'm doing with this kind of work.
This is why I love who you are, right? You're such a honest, like just caring, amazing human, right? You're like, yeah, I still am working towards my goals too, right? I mean, so often we hear people say like, yeah, I'm there. All right. I made it. But you're very, very candid in saying like, I'm on a journey. I'm going through this journey and trying to get to the end result. With that, MVP Retouch, which I know we're going to be kind of showing a lot of that today, which I think, that's one of the huge things. So for me as a photographer, like the barrier to retouching is so high. I'm like, I'm going to let after shoot do the thing and do the stuff. And, now that after shoot, we can open these files in Photoshop. I actually started taking a lot more like personal creative work, right? Like posing my kids and putting outfits and all sorts of stuff. But there's always that next level where I'm like, if I could just figure out how to like step this up a little bit, how would that work? So how did MVP Retouch kind of like come to life, and tell us about that?
Sure. So backstory, even though I started photography in 2009, I am what they call an OG on Photoshop, 1991. And I got my first graphic design job when I was 16 years old. I won't talk about what it is right now, but someone's asking for subtitles, whatever that is.
Okay, yeah.
Anyway,
and
But my point is, being a Photoshop nerd, it seemed to evolve naturally into offering some kind of tools because I always make things, you know. I was hesitant to release Photoshop Actions because even still today, but 6, 7, 8 years ago, my idea was that people sell actions as a cash grab. And I was real skeptical back then. And then I realized that no, you can make useful actions, and people do. And so I started developing that. And then I ran into some developers online who said, hey, why don't we partner on some plugins? What ideas do you have? Here's some that we have. And it went back and forth. And I've changed developers since then on a couple of occasions, changed distribution platforms on a couple of occasions. But the impetus came from just being a Photoshop nerd, not just someone who likes to make pretty pictures, but someone who digs around in the intricacies of Photoshop and color science. And I was like, you know, a lot of these things I make for myself might be useful to people, and friends and associates would be like, oh, you could sell these. And I still thought, cash grab, I'm not down for it. So then I did some real soul searching on that. And I said, no, if I make good tools at accessible price points, this can maybe be a side thing. Well, fast forward to 2022, and I took everything internal, made our own website, our own distribution channel, our own development people. They're still third-party partners, but we're all very much in this together. And now it's my job. So, you know, and we stick to the philosophy of creating tools for artists by artists that actually work. We're not price gouging. We try to just, you know, I don't know, run a business and keep the lights on. But it's there's a side of me that people don't realize. I'm not just a crazy musician and crazy artist. I'm very much a technical nerd, not as much as my developers, but I get excited about it. So that's where it came from, satisfying that other side, but also seeing, hey, how can we fill a void with what people might need and don't know they need, you know, in Photoshop. And a lot of people like to harp about how long they've been using Photoshop. And I'm not trying to brag. I'm just saying that when you have a 30-year history with the program, you realize it can dance and do things that most people don't think about. And we're still kind of trying to see how to make it dance while chasing Adobe's constant changes. But anyway.
and honestly, that resonates with me so much, right? Like the value of the retouch tools, right? There's so many amazing things you can do with it, and they simplify a lot of things that are, you know, challenging, but the price point is just on another level, right? Like these sort of things that you would pay way more to have the value that you provide. It's really cool. And again, that's part of our way of doing things here at Aftershoot too, right? Is trying to provide value for everything. So
that's one of the reasons I really liked talking to you, by the way, to all of your team, was when you said, hey, can we talk about Aftershoot? I thought, yeah, I guess we can. It's not like other people with software haven't asked me before. But your whole attitude and your whole community and your whole approach was very organic, was very artist focused, was very passion focused. It wasn't just more tech to push out there and hope that people buy it. And I really like, I embrace that idea and that philosophy very much that you guys do. So that's one of the reasons I'm here today, is because I really love what you guys do. Not just the cool tech of Aftershoot, but your whole philosophy. I just want to let you know that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that's who we are. Cool. So without further ado, let's I'm gonna share your screen. We'll get you starting to retouch. I am Celeste. I'm still trying to figure out how the captions went away and what I can do to get them back. So bear with me, but I'll let Nino kind of take over and do that, and I'll do some investigating and turn my camera off so you don't have to see me like poking in there. So without further ado, Nino, I'll have your screen's going to be joining in and I'll be leaving. So if you want to take on over.
And there we go. Are we in Photoshop? I suppose, I assume we see Photoshop, right, guys? At least I hope so. All right, guys. So if you can't see this, please let Justin know immediately. If you can't hear me, let Justin know immediately. And if you have any questions, also let Justin know, because I can't see them. I am currently in Photoshop just by myself. I don't see any other screens. I can go check out the screen, or maybe I have it on my phone. I don't know. Regardless, this is a different platform for me today. Of all the live streaming I've done, I generally use other platforms. This is a cool one, though, I have to say. All right, Justin, are you there? And do we have any questions initially? Yes, no?
Oh, yeah, I guess I might have. Yes, I'm here. So you may have lost my poor, sad face in the corner.
Actually, I don't see anybody but Photoshop right now. So I don't know.
All right, cool. Yeah. So, yep, you're good. We can see your screen. Everything's great. Let's show us what you got.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit, guys, because, you know, here's the thing. People have asked me before, like when I either do a live stream or a live stream class with them, you know, a video chat with them, whatever, they say, hey, well, here's the genres that I shoot. For example, they might start with that. I shoot boudoir. What can you show me? I shoot fashion. What can you show me? I shoot high school seniors. What can you show me? Here's the thing. Here's like the main thing that I want you to consider. A full-time retoucher, professional retoucher who does anything in a commercial level doesn't see people. They don't see hair, eyes, clothing, metal, concrete, smoke, cardboard, guitars, plastic, metal. We don't see any of that. Okay. We see things very differently with texture, what we call frequencies, right? And color and shade and things like that. All right. So what does that mean for you as a retoucher? Regardless of what you shoot, I'm not going to sit there and make a long color science class here right now, but I will tell you this. It's just pixels. That's what I'm trying to convey. It's just pixels. And once you understand that and stop fearing it, you'll realize you can do anything the more you get along with this. This is just tools. It's just toys. These are just pixels. And this is all just technology to create an illusion of Jenna right there, right? So that kind of overarching sort of idea is what I tell my students and all. Stop looking at how do I edit skin? How do I edit hair? No. How do we manipulate pixels? Now, if you're brand new, you don't know how to manipulate pixels. I get it, right? And if you've been editing for a little while, maybe you have been thinking about what's my skin approach? What's my hair approach? What's my whatever approach? And that's fine. You got to still have your vision. But when I try to convey this idea, I just mean that there's less to be scared of than you might consider, right? So let's look in here. Now, even when you have a shot like this, and I know I get some quote unquote criticism sometimes that, well, how can you show us how to edit a, commercial model? That's not fair. They're perfect, quote unquote. Well, I want to dissuade you from that idea. Editing, Photoshop editing should be ideally about finishing, about bringing your vision to life and completing it, not about fixing. Yeah, fixing is part of it. But if that's your only thing, if you think retouching is simply fixing problems, then you're already putting yourself in a bad mindset to really achieve your vision. I know I'm getting a little bit like sort of philosophical here because that to me is important. If you don't know how to edit at all, you never use Photoshop, there's 100 million videos on YouTube. And I'm not sending you away. I'm not trying to be dismissive. I'm just saying you can learn the tech. But what are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? And so by learning the Photoshop methods, the proper ones, at least what considered to be the standardized ones, this makes you very, very powerful because you can accomplish anything. So for example, I know like this bar back here, this light back here, because I had a backlight on her. This bar back here probably catches your eye and you're like, how do we get rid of that? Things like that might come to mind. Let me look at my other one here, see what else we got. Okay, zoom in real close. There we go. Let's talk about what my approach might be on something like this. First and foremost, I start with the basic Photoshop tools. What are those basics to me? That's going to be your healing brush and your spot healing brush. Why? Because to me, that's the fastest work. I'm going to duplicate the background layer, in other words, the main image, because I like to make sure I have a copy of it in case I mess up. Pretty common stuff. Now, what do I mean by making healing basic? All right, when you understand the healing brush or the spot healing, both, you realize what they're for. And what they're really for are like hard dots like that, maybe a stray hair like that, etc. Like maybe these creases in her forehead. That's what it's for. So I start with that because I know that the other methods that I utilize, this is a spot healing brush, the other methods that I utilize to perfect the skin do not address or modify these dots. These are hard contrast points, also known as high frequency points. I'm getting to a point on this, believe me, no pun intended. All right. So we know, or I know, that you have to get rid of these with some kind of healing within reason. And there are other ways to do the healing. But for now, let's say we did some of that, because these dots can be removed by a lot of different AI plugins that are out there right now. I find that in testing those, that they often remove too much or too, not the way I want them removed, and they're a little too smooth or something like that. So I tend to go in and just polish up the little bits, things like that. There we go. Just trying to get a semi-final result for you guys as we work. Now, moles aren't a problem. Moles are great and they can be great, but that's more of a vision thing. I'm getting rid of them as a matter of function here, just to kind of showcase what's possible, of course, but you can keep moles if you like that. I love freckles too. I've got a shoot coming up next month with a model with an immense amount of freckles. Absolutely stunning. Very excited to work with that. So I'm
Now
not anti-mole. Uh-huh.
with the spot healing brush here, you're not like going too crazy with it, right? You're basically just saying, okay, spot heal, spot heal, spot heal. You're not like focused on where it's pulling stuff from or anything to that extent, right? You're kind of just, you're basically just saying, hey, get rid of this. And if it's not totally perfect based on the heal, it's okay because you're going to retouch that later, or
To a degree. Like, for example, in the regular healing brush where you actually sample an area like I just did there, that's going to be for me for larger areas. My spot healing, I wouldn't necessarily try it on a crease like this because it's probably going to replace the crease with the blur. But yeah, I am going just real fast with a very obvious hard lines and high frequency points that people ask me all the time, when do you stop? I stop when I get bored, when I feel like it looks okay. And by the way, a full reconstruction, which I'm not doing here, I don't, she doesn't have any major creases or anything. Those are different situations and they vary a lot. I know a lot of people ask me, hey, how do I fix a major problem? Here's why I don't do that on general live streams or things like that. I think that the de facto standard approaches for editing portraits is very, very important, very, very powerful. Ideally, you should not pick a shot that requires a major reconstruction. If you want to get good at major reconstructions, then you're going to have to practice, and a lot of it. And there's a lot of different approaches to it. I mean, like completely replacing a face or a forehead, or swapping out a mouth, or a giant crease, replacing it with another image or something like that. And I know we have AI and GenFill, you guys. GenFill has a lot of use, don't get me wrong. But it's a little bit of a crapshoot still with GenFill. You're like, hey, do this thing. You're like, hey, let's do this thing. Like I had a student tell me the other day that they wanted to try something wild. They changed out the background of a model, and they changed the background to like some kind of like space scene, outer space desert scene. Radical, right? Well, small typo. We put dessert, and next thing you know, this girl's standing in front of a bunch of like key lime pie. So, funny as that is, computers do what you tell them to do, not what you want them to do. So that's why I like to do things manually and embrace the new tech like GenFill as needed, where needed. It's still evolving, to say the least.
Yeah, cool. So we're spot healing, right, with that spot heal brush, kind of just taking care of some of the big stuff. Not going too crazy, or until you get bored, one or the other. But mainly those harder things, right? So we're not looking at like small, like if there's a pimple or anything like that, or would you?
No, a pimple for sure is what spot healing really excels in for the most part. What we're trying to avoid, and I'm trying, I will get to that because I meant to mention that earlier. What we're trying to avoid is anything that anything that is obviously like a soft or smooth area. Like, let's say you don't like these creases and dark areas under the eyes. Let's say you want to lighten that. Well, that's not a healing situation because that's not high frequency. The hair is all high frequency. That's a whole different department. The outfit, all this mesh right here, this is very high frequency. These are things that we have to think about when we're going to try to modify things. The chest here, obviously we have one high frequency line right here, and then the rest is all low frequency. You have to remember this stuff? No, you don't have to remember these terms. You don't have to use them. But when you understand that this situation, if you needed to fix something here or here that's soft, that situation is a dodge and burn or potentially frequency separation process or even something else. You just understand to use the right tools for the job. For example, let's say you're trying to hammer a deck together. You're building a deck in the backyard. You have your planks of wood and you got to hammer them. Can you hammer the deck together with a screwdriver? Yes. Is it the ideal tool? No. Are you going to struggle? Probably. Yeah. But you can get it done, but it's the wrong tool. And that's what I'm trying to say. So we have to identify what we're trying to accomplish and know, or rather learn, which tools are the best ones for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's fantastic.
Okay, so now with that said, this is where most people can either heal or have played with healing and do okay with it, or they run an AI thing that removes moles and blemishes and everything else, and that's lovely. But the next step is what I think, and of course, if anyone has any questions, let me know. But I think the next step is still the one that makes people cringe the most and get angry at the most, or they swear by it religiously, and that is the concept of dodge and burn for skin correction. And I want to show that. And you know what? If we do nothing but that today, and you understand it for the first time, then you probably will have a like epiphany moment. It's so important to understand dodge and burn in the world of retouching. The term has been overused. We use it for lots of different things, and there's a lot of misconceptions. I want to clarify what I mean by dodge and burn for skin correction. Okay, so let's go to the basics, just to kind of reiterate people. Dodge and burn. They're old darkroom terms from literally the darkroom ages, and dodge means brighten, burn means darken. That's all it means. There's so many different ways to brighten and darken things in Photoshop, so it's wildly open-ended. So I'm going to show you what I recommend. Okay. Now we're going to put an adjustment layer of like curves. I like curves, and then I'm going to brighten about like that. Why would we use curves? I don't like to teach just do what I say. I like to teach you why. So here's why we're using curves. When you brighten pixels in Photoshop, there's a lot of different ways to go about it. If you do a linear brightening, where you take every brightness level and bring it up a certain amount, 50 or whatever, they all get brighter and everything gets hazier, and it's very linear. That does not preserve contrast. Brightening on a curve like this preserves contrast, and contrast is texture. That's why we use curves ideally. Now, if you haven't used adjustment layers before, again, it's a good idea to watch some videos on that. We're not going to go into a lot of detail on that. If there's a million questions, I'll answer them. But adjustment layers generally have a function like brightening or darkening or whatever, and then a mask. We're going to take that mask and invert it. We can either use that on the invert button on the properties window here, or just hit Command or Control I. And now that's blocked away. If we use a white paintbrush on a black mask, we brighten. We'll get to that in a minute. But now we're going to call that D for dodge. I'm going to duplicate that one because I need to. B for burn. And guess what? I pull it down to darken again with contrast. Now, very simply, this is where people tend to get lost because they're like, all right, now how do I brighten? Here's what I do. Take my soft paintbrush with white on the dodge or the burn. My opacity of the brush, 100%. My flow, 1%. And my brush, nice and soft, or that is a hardness of 0, right? And now I can brighten carefully, building up dark areas here. I don't know what's beeping in my office, but something beeped. Hopefully it's not anything dangerous. Oh, good. Good. Actually, my office here is like right off the kitchen, so every now and then the kids go into the kitchen. It gets noisy. So, and by kids I mean 18 and 15-year-old. They're not babies. Okay, so
are you on the? Sorry, are you on the dodge or the burn?
I'm on dodge right now, and there's a reason why I'm like not really telling anybody what I'm doing, because when you first demo this, it's not obvious. It looks like I'm just polishing a clean mirror. You're like, what are you doing? You know, and I like to show the before and after, and then explain what the philosophy is. Because what we're doing with dodging and burning, here's the deal. This is not Jenna. This is not even a physical image. This is not a print. This is nothing. This is an illusion. This is pixels forming bright and dark and color hues, giving us the illusion of a person. Our brain translates it into Jenna, and we see a face and we see an expression. And that is what a digital photo is. When we brighten and darken anything, dodging and burning, we are changing the perception of it. We're changing the potential depth of it. This is why dodging and burning of all kinds is available to retouchers for anything. And it's not just this method either, but this is the best one that works for skin. Again, I'm not showing you just yet because showing you a more final is a little bit more powerful. And then I'll walk you through kind of my approach and philosophy.
Yeah, I know. I'm watching and I'm trying to find the pattern. This is cool.
Yeah, and that's another thing too, guys. Just to be clear, whenever I do these, I do not practice on this image. I chose an image 20 minutes before we started. I do not do rehearsing. I like to show people the good, the bad, the failures, the challenges, etc. with images. Okay, so this is not rehearsed. Everything comes with, trial and error and figuring out the process. Dodging and burning is an art form in and of itself. And as I do it, I'm going to quickly explain that a lot of people see me do this for the first time and think, no, I'm not doing that. That's not going to make me any money. I need more efficiency. You know what? And I hear you. There's all kinds of tools, which I'll show you. For example, we have my own tool, SKN, great tool to get started on. We'll talk about that in a minute because I'd love to showcase that for you guys. But why do we need to learn this method? A couple reasons why. One, I don't care if you use my tool or Evoto or the old Portraiture by Imagenomic or anything, or Retouch for me. They might come close some days and they might not come close some days. And you need to be able to go, okay, the client wants this shot and that's it. I know how to fix it with dodging and burning. I know how to fix it with frequency separation because they love the shot, but they just hate one little piece. Can I fix that, please? Yes, I can. And that makes you powerful because if the automatic stuff isn't exactly doing the trick, you can either finish what the automatic things didn't finish, or you can just do it manually. Maybe it's the hero shot. Maybe they say, I want a 40 by 60 print of this. Okay, well, I'm going to take this in the commercial grade retouch, right? For the hero shot. Learning how to retouch properly. Even if you outsource, you can have a real conversation with your retouchers. You can tell them, here's what I want, and you can use the language they're used to. There's nothing wrong with a photographer learning about retouching, period. I don't care if you're 500 high school seniors a year kind of volume. Learning it is a benefit of some kind. Okay. Mm-hmm. Another thing too, guys, is if you do learn this method, your work will be better because it'll be more polished looking. Clients will be like, oh my God, I look amazing. You won't be able to advertise this because no one cares. And this is just experience talking. Hey guys, I do this high-end retouch. Yeah, that's cool. You have Photoshop. We know. Clients don't generally care how.
Yeah, that's very
but
true.
if your work looks amazing, your value went up. They'll pay your prices, right?
I can already, I mean, just watching this, I can already see some images that I've taken of brides that had I just like up the retouching a couple levels, they would be things that I could enter in competition and, you know, that sort of stuff. Just beyond that, it's the work that you can put forth, right? I mean, portfolio style work, it just, I can already see it. I mean, I've been watching diligently and I can already see just how much this image has leveled up. Watching the pixels, I'm like peeping on them and everything, and it looks incredible. I mean, that, and it again, it elevates your overall look of your images. Clients they don't need to know that it's Photoshop or whatever it is. All they need to know is that this image blows that other person's image away because it looks so perfect.
That's exactly right. And that's, of course, the hope. And a lot of people who are either actively running a very successful business in their portrait work and they're already booked pretty solid, et cetera, they think, well, I don't need to learn this. It works. I can't argue with that. But at the same time, I will throw back at them, why don't you ramp up the caliber of your work and increase your pricing? I bet you like that idea. You know, So embracing multiple methods, automation, outsourcing, manual, all these things together make you unstoppable as a photographer. It's like saying, I shoot portraits and I'm only going to shoot an 85 mil always, forever, always, because that's what I like and that's what I'm used to. That's all I know. Oh, okay, but you're kind of limiting yourself. Well, outsourcing, automatic retouching, and manual retouching, those are like 3 different lenses. You should have them all in your arsenal so you know how to tackle anything. Also, another thing too, most, I don't care what photographer you want to talk about, all those super famous ones, Annie L and who else, maybe Joey L and everybody else, a lot of times they'll have their outsourcing for the skin work because that's complicated and detailed and tedious. And then when it comes back, they'll finish the image because they know they're color grading. They know how to finish polishing the skin in any way they want. They know Photoshop. They outsource it for convenience and because they are who they are. But they understand how to finish their images. It's very rare that a top photographer, portrait artist sends out the image raw and it comes back 100% done unless it's a commercial job. If it's a personal project, they usually put their hand on it in some manner. So manual stuff is hardly just a chore. It should be your vision coming to life is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. No, and I love that. Just, you know, CC Kermy Photography says always level up. And that's the thing. Like this, to me, the free time I'm acquiring from using tools like Aftershoot, I have more ability right now to step into the space, right? And take these images and put them into a whole nother stratosphere, right? I mean, just the difference, and you can tell, right? Like as a photographer and as a non-photographer, you can look at 2 images and say, oh, this one looks like it belongs in a magazine. And this one looks like it belongs on like a 5x7 print on my desk at work, right? And that difference comes from this, right? This is where you level up and you bring those images to a whole nother level.
That's exactly right. And I could not agree with that more. And by the way, things like dodge and burn and some basic things, they can be set up with Photoshop actions. So if you guys want, let Justin know, and I will send you guys a little packet of free actions that helps set up some of these things. If you guys want, no problem at all. I'm very happy to do that because to me, any type of utility function actions like this should just be distributed. I want people to use the tools, especially if they're simple and basic, and I'm happy to send those. Now, with that said, I do want to show one example of what happens when, let me just get rid of that one because that was from a project last night. This is my own panel called SKN. We name all of our panels, or I should say, different acronyms. So we have SKN, FC3. The other ones actually mean something. SKN is just skin, obviously. But we have a couple of different things. Let's say you run AI Evoto or Retouch for Me. Let's say you run Image Portraiture or whatever it is you run for your automatic processes. This I want to show you real quick because I think it's not just, oh, look, another skin editing plugin. This one's different in one key way. And it marries well into knowing how to do things manually because you understand your Photoshop layers window. It marries really well into that. So I want to show you that real quick. Let me just get rid of these. Let's say I run cleanup. We have two functions, cleanup and toning. The toning function is really cool. I'll show you in a minute. This is a 16-bit full-blown high-res image, and we're streaming. So all the setup here could take 25 seconds. So if anyone has any questions while it sets up everything, let Justin know.
Love it. Yeah, this is cool. So for those who aren't totally familiar with what something like this plugin does, you install it to Photoshop and it's going to kind of like run automatic actions. Is that the easiest way?
There's scripts and some proprietary code. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's going to go through and essentially I see it creating layers in the background.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to do layers. It's going to do some things that essentially are going to help alleviate. So in your normal workflow, you'd be getting rid of the big stuff, right? With the spot heal like you just did. And then you'd run this action, and this is going to essentially do the dodging and burning, or
right. So what it does is it doesn't automatically try to do any type of dodging and burning or anything like that. Where it does that's different, if you look inside this layer folder, there's a lot of processes that have been done. But this is where it makes the biggest difference. I'm going to show you a demo, of course, but where it makes the biggest difference is you'll note we're still on the layers window. Anyone who's used any other plugin for skin editing knows they go to filter and come down here and choose, portraiture or retouch for me. It opens up a third-party window. You make all your lovely changes and you hit OK. And then when you're done, you have a layer with the fixes, and that's it. And you can choose opacity and you can tweak things. Of course, you can mask things, but you don't have control of everything. If you want to completely change your thought, you have to go back in and do it again in a third-party window. Everything on ours occurs actively, masked out, actively on the layers window. Meaning, I can take my texture recovery and get rid of it. I can increase the smoothing right now. I can turn it down. I can increase the initial smoothing. I can reprocess what type of texture is preserved. Here's a broad texture. Let's reprocess a smaller texture, which it takes the original image and does a frequency separation type of process to extract a tighter texture. And then I can dial that in however I feel I want it. I can scale back the overall opacity of everything. I can scale back the smoothing amount if I want. Luma compression just is kind of like makes the brights darker and the darkers brighter, just to kind of balance things out. I can add contrast to the skin, reduce contrast on the skin, darken it if I need to, brighten it if I need to. Hue balance means it takes all the skin tone. It'll analyze the skin selection, analyze all the hues in it, and then create an average. And then it'll just, if you choose hue balance, it'll make all the skin tone the same exact color of the average, which may or may not be what you want, certainly not a maximum. And then you can kind of switch. You see all these things actively while I'm working on the layers window. On top of that, for example, on top of that folder, I could have some color grading. And I can sit there and do some color grading on top of it, right? And this is not necessarily the best thing, but underneath, I can still change the smoothing amount. I can still change the overall opacity. I can reprocess or choose more texture or less texture. I can change the Luma compression. I can add contrast, actively changing the skin work on the layer, on the layers window. That's how we worked really hard to make a skin editing program that doesn't just open up a third-party window. You get what you get, and then you close it. That's what we really strive for. If that makes sense.
That's cool. So it's automatically finding the skin for you too.
Correct. Yeah, we have a method to find skin that enhances Photoshop's own skin selection function. We send what's called chroma data to it, and that lets Photoshop kind of see through shadows a little bit better. But we also have, if we were to right-click our little bottom left button here on the main SKN window, we have choices. You can choose how much of the fuzziness of the skin selection. Right now I had it on very loose. That means just a little bit more, it's a little more liberal with finding the skin tone. average, and you can choose just subject only. Subject only is great when either it's a boudoir image or a fine art nude and there's only skin, right? And then, or if it's just a really problematic image with a lot of deep shadows and the skin's getting lost, sometimes subjects only helps that. So we take Photoshop's skin tone selection functions and inside color range, but we enhance them by setting a different kind of data. So yeah, it works really, really well for that. We even, it works so well that we even made, if you click the button itself, the little bottom left button that I just opened for preferences, if you click it by itself, it'll select the skin for you. And then you can take that selection and do anything you want with it. It's so powerful that we made it its own little function.
That's amazing. Sorry, I was trying to move my face and I accidentally made my face everything real quick.
Okay.
Because my face is blocking it. So I'm going to hide my face so you can just show that one more time. And then you won't be able to talk to me or hear me for a sec.
Okay, yeah, sure. Now I was going to show everybody that what we've done is on the main SKN panel, the bottom left little circular selection thing. If you right click it, you get those options that we were showing about how much you want Photoshop and SKN to find in terms of skin, like very tight or very loose tolerance. But if you just click the circle itself without any right clicking, it'll select the skin using its chroma method that we developed, which is always going to be better than Photoshop's. For like 99% of the time, it's going to be better. So there you go. It has a selection running and you can do anything with it. So with that selection running, if you went to, I don't know, curves, now you have the skin control under curves. See that? So I just wanted to show that it does skin tone selection on its own. By the way, has anybody got questions at all? Not just about SKN, but anything.
Yeah, so we got what plugin is it, and then SKN got it. So it's actually Nino Batista's. It's a whole system, right? So there's more than just the skin, right?
Correct. Yeah, we have a bunch of actions and capture one styles, but we also have our three sort of hallmark plugins, which is SKN, FC3, and CMX2. Those are our main ones. SKN is, of course, our far and away most popular because everybody wants to edit skin. But yeah, there's three of them. And I haven't even shown you the tone section yet. Tone is a whole nother department.
So I have a question. So let's say, because we introduced skin afterwards, right? So let's just say that I was we are starting from scratch. So I'd go through, I'd do my spot healing, get rid of my big things. Am I still doing that dodge and burn that you were doing before, or am I going straight into SKN at that point?
So whether you use SKN or anything else, when you look at what dodge and burn really is, we're brightening dark areas and darkening light areas to remove the perception of problems, things that we want smoothed out, right? If we look at it that way, then what we're essentially doing, broadly speaking, is reducing contrast. And if we're reducing contrast, then sometimes running a plugin, SKN or something else, will reduce the contrast overall. You learn to look at it like, you know what? Good, I've got the base cleanup done, but there's still some things I need to dodge and burn, but they've been reduced. So now your dodge and burn goes faster. See? So whether you see it like a fix or I want to finalize, I want that a little smoother because of my preference, right? But if you run SKN, Evoda, Retouch for me, whatever, your dodging and burning generally is faster because your contrast has been reduced. That's a very broad way of speaking. And of course, there are, outlier situations that don't apply to that.
Absolutely. Cool. So I would do in theory, I could do SKN first and then go create my two dodge and burn layers. And then if I need to polish anything further, I can absolutely do that through those layers. Cool.
Mm-hmm. So, like I said, learning the manual methods and then using the tools is cool because you're unstoppable. Many times on my edits, on my personal projects, SKN doesn't make an appearance, and many times it does. Sometimes it nails it 95% of the way, and sometimes it nails it 50% of the way, and I scale back the opacity, knowing that at least I got the process started, and now I can finish it up manually or whatever the case may be. It's not an all or nothing deal to me, the methods that I use. By the way, I want to show you the quick toning ones real quick. This is the toning function. So we have access now with the same mask to your midtones, highlights, and shadows. So you can like darken your skin tone, brighten your skin tone. You can add some color to it. You can shift it more yellow if you want. You can take the shadows in the skin and make it more red or less. You can add some false highlights, choosing how tight you want the highlights to be. See, some really bright to less. You can have linear contrast, which is a way of just kind of creating a lot of depth into the skin. Mid-range shift, it takes the linear contrast and shifts it brighter or darker. You have desaturation to mute it, because sometimes you want to mute the overall skin tone, which is the key to like a deep skin tone, if that's what you're after. Not that Jenna needs that. Her light skin tone kind of makes, that's her. We have a grading section where we have various sort of common skin tones that we can wash over our skin to give us a different vibe. Let's change the opacity a little higher. There's like a greenish yellow, and then we can choose different blend modes for it. Overlay is going to be stronger. Hue is going to be more direct. Let's try maybe this one. And it's all about dialing in the average of what looks good to you. You can increase the contrast. So we have this beautiful sort of skin toning tool. And of course, everything can be saved as a preset. Like this one was called Priscilla Fur because I did some shots of Priscilla in a fur yesterday, and I saved a preset real quick so I can quickly run that and then get the same exact look next time. Just push plus, name it, save it, and you have it. But again, the key here is that everything happens on the layers window. There's an enormous set of functions that go on in these layers. I do not recommend going in here. It's complicated and you're liable to break the meta connection to the panel. So just leave that alone. Anything you want to edit manually, do that after you're done with this.
That's incredible. So not only we're taking care of skin retouching, right? We're getting it all smooth and looking beautiful, but you can also, I mean, just on those couple buttons you clicked, I was like, oh, that looks like this magazine. Oh, that looks like that magazine. Like just the way the contrast, the linear contrast and the skin toning and all that stuff kind of floats together. It really does open you up to a whole new space, right? Just on skin alone, which is incredible.
Which is what we were striving for, like I said. And for me, I'm very flexible. I will start color grading an image and then go, I don't like the skin like that. I should have cleaned it up more or less. And so I thought, can we make a reasonably powerful skin editing plugin that does not open up a third-party window, like I said, and then you commit to your settings or even a third-party application completely? Can we make it all in the layers window and make it flexible? This originally started life as a very haphazard 225 step action. And then and that was just one function of it. And then my developer came in and we rebuilt it over a couple of months into scripts and some proprietary things and made it what it is. And it's ever evolving. We just dropped an update recently. It had some of these functions in here actually are brand new, probably like 2 or 3 weeks old. So yeah, that was the mission. How powerful can we make something that lives on the layers window for flexibility? I can continue, like I said, with layers on top of here and color grade if I want to, and everything underneath I can still mess with as I need to mess with it in any way that I want and still be flexible. And I can even go back to the cleanup if I want to. There's ways to do that. So that's what we're after. So again, I'm not just trying to make this a full-blown SKN marketing piece, but showing you that having manual control, understanding your layers, and then starting with a plugin. But then, like, for example, let's say I don't do my color layers here. Let's say I flatten to a new layer, that's Shift Option Command or Shift Alt Control E. Now I took all the work from SKN and I flattened it to a layer. I'm not saying it's good or bad. This was just random settings, okay? But now if I want to, I could liquefy. I could run frequency separation manually, whether I use FC3 for that, if you want to use our tool, or whatever action you have for frequency separation. You've done all the SKN work and now you flatten and you can continue. Everything happens on the layers window. And again, if one thing a commercial retoucher hates is commitment. A client comes back and says, if a client comes back and says, scale back all the skin smoothing, I flattened it, you're not going to get the job again. So flexibility on the layers is important.
Now, can you, just for my fun, I think this would be a real cool thing to see, is just can you show us the before and after, right? Like deselect all the, since you flattened it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, she's way too red. That was just me pushing buttons, but yeah.
Yeah, so we went from that to that, and realistically, you could have done that. You taught us all the other things, but you probably could have done that in about 45 seconds.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it was. You went from something that was a great photo to start with, but you just took it to magazine quality with just a couple clicks.
Yep. And like I said, again, you can just go in and anything that it doesn't quote fix, you can fix it. And another thing too, without sounding too cheap, if your goal is to put work on Instagram and that's mostly it, like SKN will take you 99.9% of the way there just about every single time.
Yeah.
So if you're a content creator, as it were, this is gold. Do I think you should run SKN blindly? However, whatever you get, and then run it for a 40 by 60 print? No, I think you should be a little more cautious of what you're doing. Start with SKN and tweak minor little details. But if you're a content creator, and you make a lot of portraits and you need them quickly, this is gold. You can have edits done in 2 minutes. So just throwing that out there.
I know that I'm already hyped up on it. I mean, when you first, showed me this, I was like, this is a whole nother level. I am one who can navigate Photoshop, but I don't do anything complex like this. Like skin softening that's, if I can't do it in the Lightroom clarity slider and sharpness slider, then it's too complicated for me. So this is huge because it really does give me that ability to kind of step up to another level, right? I can make a really polished portrait. And again, I just like after shoot, like we always say, you want to be involved, right? It's not like, hey, run the AI, run the action, call it a day and say it's good. But you could if you had to. But if you're still involved, I mean, you're only escalating and making it even more amazing. And so we only just saw SKN. You have frequency separation, right? You just mentioned that.
Yeah, this is FC3, which is our third version. This is my first plugin for MVP going back to 2017. This is the third version of it, version 3.0. And it's a frequency separation setup tool. But one of the, you want me to show you real quick? So the hallmark of it?
Yeah, I'd love to. What does it do?
Let me show you real quick. So a lot of people are like, come on, man, I am not paying for a frequency separation plugin. There are actions, bro, everywhere. I know, and I hear you. But here's where we differ. Let's say I come in here and I choose a big radius, median, 22 pixel radius. Go. Let's set that up. Again, we're streaming and it does, this particular function doesn't do any server-side AI, but we also have face recognition and whatnot, so it can calculate ideal settings for you if you wanted. I didn't do that right now. But, okay, so now I have a 22-pixel frequency separation radius. If you know anything about frequency separation, then you know if I were to paint between the high and the low layers, let's find some skin tone. I'm just ruining this to show you, okay? That is a 22-pixel radius, right? Now, when you run frequency separation, you're told to choose your radius up front, depending on what blurring operator filter you want to use. So a 22-pixel radius is high, but sometimes you want to use that. But what if you look at it and go, 22 is too high? I guess I'll delete the entire folder and run it again, right? Nope, not with FC3. We change our radius and we hit play. It keeps what you painted, and come on, streaming. it works so much faster than this when we're not streaming. You choose a new radius and it reprocesses it. There you go. You just reprocess new texture. It is not opacity. It is reprocessing texture. It's the same technology we use in SKN. So it makes frequency separation dynamic.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Which is, yeah, people don't realize that. We get emails all the time. People saying, why would I buy FC3 versus an action? We show them this reprocessing and they say, that's why.
Now, let's say someone doesn't have a ton of experience with frequency separation. What would be the reason to use something like this?
To use the panel? Well, one reason would be, for example, let's say you don't know what radius settings might be good. We have auto portrait. So you just choose I want to work with a tight texture because I want to be able to smooth her face with some painting and some blurring and whatnot. So I just use auto portrait, hit tight, and then hit play. And now it's going to take a snapshot of the image, send it to the server. Server's going to come back, find the face, calculate the size of the face in relation to the size of the image, and determine if it's a half shot, 3/4, full length, or headshot, and then calculate a 5-pixel radius in this case. So it makes this guesswork is gone. Now it picks, and by the way, these settings are what I recommend after testing over thousands of images. So now if you were to come in here between high and low and maybe do a 4 or 5% flow, you can quickly smooth out with frequency separation some areas here and under eyes if you want. Please note, I just did this earlier with dodge and burn, but you know what? Frequency separation is often useful when the problem isn't that severe. Dodge and burn is for a little bit more manipulation. So now I have found a tight texture because I told it tight, and it calculated a 5-pixel radius for me. I didn't have to come up with that. So
wow.
like fish in the barrel, easy. Oh, and by the way, it's also dynamic. So if I switch to rough and hit play, it'll keep the painting that I did. Or if I did any healing on the high layer, whatever, if you're familiar with that, it'll cook that in, keep your paint area in between, and then reprocess to a rough texture after it, goes to the server and our streaming and blah. This is all usually pretty fast. So
yeah, that's incredible. So
yeah.
we're almost out of time. Is there anything else you want to show before I give a nice couple questions?
No, I mean, I don't like, as much as I love running my company, I don't like screaming about myself too much. We try to make it, there are like 50 videos on the NBP YouTube channel where you can learn about this, and I'm always happy to answer questions, but I feel like I've talked about myself enough.
Amazing. Yeah, no. So, I see Marietta's in here and she absolutely loves it. Hands down, says it's amazing. I can just see the pure value in this short little demo that you had. So you do have a YouTube channel. So just a couple more things about NBP so we can kind of, give everyone the full scope of things. So you have a bundle, right, where they could do frequency separation, SKN. What does that cost?
So yeah, the SKN FC3 bundle, we call it the Skin Mastering bundle. It's $129 USD, which is roughly the price of, I don't know, one plugin out there normally.
Absolutely nothing. That's a huge, and again, this is something that, they can run it on all the images that they want and everything. So it's not like outsourcing somewhere where you have to pay per image to get frequency separation done and that sort of stuff. It's all just, I can go through and retouch all of the photos I want using this for $129, which is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like my previous developers, who I'm not going to mention by name, we had arguments all the time because they wanted the price to go up. And I'm an old, aging musician, and I used to be a live musician, a studio musician back in the day. And I always used to. I really loved, like, for example, like Tom Petty's philosophy, where he would do an entire tour towards his later career. And the band was paid, the label was paid, the venues were paid, and often he'd make no money because he wanted to keep the ticket prices low. He said, "Hey man, these teenagers out here don't need to be paying $200 for a rock and roll show," and he's right. So if he were alive today, he'd puke about all these ticket prices. So my point is that I told my old team members, I don't want $3.99 plugins 5 years ago, and I don't want them now. We have to make money. We have to cover costs. We have to, make a career out of this, but how low can we keep the prices? That's what I bring to the table is I know what photographers want and how cheap can we do this? And it's not just because I want to pat myself on the back. It's because I don't want to think of myself as the photographer on the other end getting hosed for average tools for $300 or $400. That's been my philosophy since day one, and I'll stick to it until I can't, which means I'll just shut down the company if it comes to that.
No, I love it. That's exactly what this industry needs, right? Is people who care, appreciate the industry, love the industry, and want to help it grow. So I did drop the link to the retouch tools in the chat here, as well as to Nino's YouTube, where you can learn some amazing stuff. And then if people want to follow you and learn more about you, where do they go?
So you can go to mbpretouchtools.com, of course, and that will eventually lead you to YouTube. There's tutorials on NBP's YouTube that have nothing to do with NBP tools. They're just like, here's me retouching. They're not outdated, but they're 1, 2, 3, 4-year-old tutorials, and they're all there. There's probably 40 of them, full length. Go watch them. I will mention this, if I may. I just took a poll over the last month over the various mailing lists and customers and social media. And there seems to be interest in my advanced commercial portrait retouching tutorial that I'm coming up with. So it's been greenlit. If you're interested in that, get with me directly. Go to ninobatista.com, send me an email, whatever it takes. If you're interested in some advanced stuff, I usually don't do really advanced tutorials because that's not most of the audience. Most people are beginner or intermediate. So making an intermediate to advanced tutorial is a first for me. And it's going to take me about 6 weeks to produce. I have a plan for it. So if anyone's interested in that, if you're not a beginner, I might have something for you that you really dig. So throwing that out there.
That's amazing. Well, Nino, thank you for everything we learned. I learned a ton. I'm on my way to MVP to go buy it now because I am like, this is easy. I can retouch all of a sudden. But we really appreciate the time, and we're super excited to have had you. And thank you everyone who tuned in. We appreciate you all. Thank you, and until next time.
I appreciate you, Justin. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.